Hello, I'm Rico Cavella. Welcome to this episode of Fearless Aging. And the title of this episode is it's a real good one. It's called the 5-Step Fat Loss Formula. And I want to add this is for permanent fat loss. And our expert guest today, his name is Andrew Panella. He's the founder of Longevity Lifestyle, a movement empowering people worldwide to overcome chronic illness, boost energy, and and get that permanent fat loss and thrive through sustainable science-backed lifestyle change. He's a certified wellness and nutritional coach, personal trainer specializing in corrective exercise with a background in economics and expertise in social impact and educational therapy. And he leverages the latest research to create educational content, courses, and personalized coaching programs. So, Andrew Panella, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Rico. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, this is a great topic. So my first question, just real briefly, just tell us your story, how you got involved with this, and how you decided to develop your longevity lifestyle and the 5-step fat loss formula.
Yeah, I got involved in the health space really out of necessity because I was dealing with my own health complications. So I had dealt with a bunch of injuries. I was 50 pounds overweight. I needed to get a series of surgeries on my knees, on my hips. I ended up getting my surgery on my sinuses. I just had a lot of chronic inflammation going on, and I wasn't getting any of the long-term solutions I was looking for in the traditional healthcare space. And so I took it
Mhm.
upon myself to start researching everything I could about the human body, ended up solving a lot of my own issues over a couple of years. And then I had a lot of people in my life asking me to try and help them out. Long story short, I left the social impact space or the corporate social impact space for more of the boots on the ground impact space. And now I work hands on with people and promote a lot of healthy living content to help people just
Yeah, I love
maintain the
that.
best possible
I love
health.
that. Most of the people that I interview have that same story that if you really want to, get to the bottom of what your mostly chronic illnesses or things that you're dealing with in the field of health or wellness, you got to figure it out yourself and get involved with people who, like naturopathic doctors and those sort of people, and functional medicine doctors and people like yourself, you and I, that have gone through it and really learn what you need to do. So I love your story and and so tell us a little bit. First, I want to question. I want to ask you what you feel. Why do you think we have such an obesity epidemic in America?
I think there are two primary factors, both underneath the broader topic of ultra processed food. I just think we have access to so much food that is extremely dense in calories and extremely low in nutrients.
Right.
So it doesn't satisfy the body. If anything, it just makes you sort of sends you on this addictive craving cycle where you keep eating more and more. And unfortunately, the second part of that is a lot of those calories are refined carbohydrates or grains. In other words, they're things that our ancestors never had access to in the wild. And
Mhm.
now they're on 90% of grocery store shelves. There's some form of a refined carbohydrate, and your body just doesn't do well long term when it's constantly exposed to that rapid influx of glucose or sugar.
Yeah, that's no question. And then also, I just recently saw a statistic that said still, as much as we know how important exercise is for it, all the benefits, still 80% of Americans are not exercising on a regular basis. It's just kind of mind blowing, isn't it? I mean, there's no debate of all the benefits that you can get from it, but still most people aren't doing it. So that's just so crazy. But anyway, so talk a little bit about, before we get into your program, talk a little bit about why obesity is so detrimental to your health and your longevity.
Well, one easy way to think about it is when you look at your body as a system, the chemical messengers that influence how all the different parts of your body communicate with one another are hormones throughout your body. So people are familiar with some of the common ones that people throw around or the neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. But when you think about muscle tissue and fat tissue, both of them are hormone producing organs. And so the more fat that you carry around on your body, the more you are releasing hormones in a way that ends up being pro inflammatory. So it ends up actually causing damage to a lot of other systems in your body. On the flip side, muscle does the same thing, releasing hormones that tend to be anti inflammatory. So that's why those that are leaner and carry more lean muscle tend to have a lower inflammation, baseline inflammation in their body, and just overall their systems are functioning in a healthier way because of that. So that's a really simplified way of explaining why obesity over the long term is really detrimental.
Yeah. As well as it having that excess body weight puts a lot of strain on your heart, a lot of strain on your joints, and it is a precursor to diabetes and also all sort of life threatening illnesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, okay, one more question before we get into your program. What do you think about all these GLP-1 medications?
I've had a lot of clients that have experimented with GLP-1s, some that have gotten really good results, some that have felt very poorly, where they've gotten really nauseous and haven't responded very well. What I say to everybody is when you have access to something like a GLP-1 or a pharmaceutical compound, even a supplement that's an all natural supplement, that can be an on ramp in your journey to starting to get some of the weight off or pushing through certain plateaus. But if you don't change the fundamental inputs in your lifestyle that led you to putting on extra weight or developing some degree of metabolic dysfunction or any negative health outcome, if you don't solve those lifestyle inputs, it doesn't matter if you use a GLP 1. Because one thing's for certain, I don't think you're going to be wanting to take a GLP-1 for life. So if you're going to take it for 6 months or 12 months or a 2-year period, you have to be managing and changing the lifestyle inputs at the same time so that when you stop taking them, you don't just put the weight back on.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But also, what about the side effects? All drugs have some side effects, and they affect
Yeah.
differently, right?
Yeah, we're pretty early on in the GLP-1 journey for a lot of people. I think it's anytime somebody claims we have a magic bullet to something, I always hesitate. I think there's always going to be trade offs.
Yeah,
And like I said, I've worked with a lot of people that have been on GLP-1. Some have gotten great results, but the reason that we started working together is they basically said, I started taking this GLP-1, the weight's starting to come off, but I really am nervous because I've heard insert XYZ case study of somebody taking the GLP-1, losing the weight, and then gaining even more weight back because they've thrown their body out of whack and not fixed the
yeah.
problem.
And I think we don't even really know what the long-term side effects could be as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your program. So what I really want to know is, let's go through your 5-step fat loss formula. But what I really want you to talk about too, why is your program different and why you think that you can get long-term results? Because as you all know, we're still the fattest country in the world, and the weight loss industry is, I think now it's up to almost $500 billion industry with all the weight loss programs and pills and powders and packaged foods, and yet we're still the fattest country. So obviously, it's not working. So why is your program different?
Yeah. So good question. Anytime I work with somebody, my three biggest priorities are that they are building out a completely personalized lifestyle that fits their preferences, their schedule, their family life, even their genetic background, depending on how much data they have there. The second is that we keep it extremely simple. I do not typically suggest that people are counting macros or calories or anything that's going to be unsustainable. I find to be counterintuitive. So I try to keep it really simple for people. And part of that is just providing them with a lot of education on just some very basic concepts for how the metabolism and the body works. And then the last piece is, as we make changes, I never tell people to overhaul their life because I think that's a recipe for failure. I look at what are the highest leverage things that you can change first that are going to get you the best results that will last. And then we build a foundation on those. And we only start to layer stuff on once you feel comfortable, like those have really become a part of your identity, part of who you are. So the reason I think a lot of results stick around is the education piece and the simplicity piece. Once people understand the inputs and mapping those to the outputs that they want, it becomes a lot easier to stop the weight gain in its tracks and reverse course.
Yeah. And so it's really about creating a lifestyle because you have to, it's not something you do for a short time and then everything's going to be fine, right? Yeah. So you got to establish that kind of a lifestyle,
Which,
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 what you
which is
offer.
also Yeah, which is also why it has to be completely personalized. I have clients that get on, they're like, please don't make me run. And I'm like, great, you'll never have to run. Let's just talk about what you like to do and then build around that. And
Yeah,
because if you don't like it, you're not going to stick to it.
exactly right. I totally agree. Okay. Well, we'll just kind of briefly run through your 5-step program. What is some of the areas of your 5-step program?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of different frameworks that I'll share with clients. And this one is probably the most popular and the most consistently effective for fat loss. I call it the 5-step fat loss formula. And I came up with it just based on the common themes that were working really well for my clients that were trying to lose weight and keep the weight off. I can go into more depth on any of these if you want, Rico, but you just tell me and I'll just go through high level first. So,
Yeah, just briefly describe what they are, and because we want our audience to know that you have a free copy of this, so when they go to your website, they can get the free copy of your. That's a really great gift, a free copy of your 5-step weight loss. So maybe just what's the title of each one of them?
yeah, of course. So, this first step that I usually recommend to people is to shorten your eating window, meaning the time between your first calories and your last calories in the day. I usually suggest that people target a 6 to 8 hour window. And the reason for that being, you can almost think of your metabolism like a daytime and nighttime cycle. When
Right.
you eat, you are putting your metabolism to work. And when
Mhm.
you take breaks, you are allowing your metabolism to sort of catch up and rest and repair. And so when you don't take enough breaks and you develop metabolic dysfunction, things just start to break down. So the first thing I recommend, keep your calories in a 6 to 8 hour window. You don't have to eat any less calories, by the way. You just keep them in a contained window to give your body a break outside of that window.
Okay.
The
So what's
second
number? Yeah, number two.
So the second step that I recommend is to exercise before your first calories in the given day. So you need to customize this for your life. Some of my clients have their first meal at 8 a.m. and then they have their last meal at 2 or 3. Some have their first meal at 2 or 3 p.m. and their last meal at 8. I think you don't want to be eating that late necessarily, but before you have that first meal of the day, get some exercise in. And this doesn't mean you need to go to the gym for an hour. It just means you might even go for a 20 or 30-minute walk to put some energy demand on your body so that you can then tap into your long-term storage, which is your fat, because you haven't eaten. So
Absolutely.
that's step number two.
Okay.
Step number three is to prioritize eating at least 30 grams of protein in your first meal. So when you do have that first meal, have at least 30 grams of protein in that meal, and then do the same exact thing for the last meal. So when you think about your eating window as having a start and an end point, the start and the end, you want to have at least 30 grams of protein in each of those. That's going to make sure you stay full. Protein takes more energy to digest, so you're going to burn more calories digesting it. And most importantly, you're going to protect your muscle tissue, which is the anti-inflammatory tissue in your body.
Right.
Step number four is to, within your eating window, prioritize healthy fats instead of carbohydrates. So, this is the one that is probably the most customizable for people based on their activity levels, based on how they respond. But generally speaking, most clients I work with, a large portion of their weight gain is due to over consuming carbohydrates, which are purely an energy source.
Right.
And oftentimes they under consume fat. And so we start to prioritize more fat than carbs in that eating window. And what that does is it gets their body accustomed to burning fat for energy. So that when you're outside your eating window, your body burns your own body fat.
Right. And what's
Step
the
number
last one? Yeah.
Step number 5 is to avoid drinking your calories. And this is one that a lot of people overlook. They think, okay, I'm going to stay away from the soda, I'll stay away from the alcohol, but then they might be having sports drinks that have either a lot of calories or a lot of sugar. They might be having fruit juice. They might be having too much dairy or too much milk. So being very mindful of liquid calories is the step 5 here. And then inside the download, I also have a bunch of other bonus tips too to help people with this.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And when you go to his website, we'll put that information in the show description, and you'll get a free copy of his 5-step formula. It's a lot more detail, and we just went over it real briefly. And the last question, we're just about out of time, and you can work with people virtually, right?
Yeah, I work primarily with people online.
Okay, great. Okay, so Andrew, thanks so much for being here. It's great information. I totally agree with you. You're doing some great work. And so I highly recommend to our audience, if permanent fat reduction is your goal, I think Andrew's the guy you want to see. So Andrew, thanks so
Yeah.
much for being here. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rico. And if people are interested in a deeper dive too, I also have a book on Amazon. It's called The Longevity Lifestyle, and it has a lot of the same frameworks and very simple systems in there that go in even more depth.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody for being here.